This week, as we continue our reflections on the Ten Commandments, we've come to the ninth commandment: you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. And noted yesterday that, like most of the other commandments, this one gets expanded to mean more than what we might initially think that it means. It's not simply formal oaths taken in a court of law, nor is it to be limited to informal oaths. Cross my heart and hope to die, stick a needle in my eye. The ninth commandment is really a call to honesty and to integrity. And it's worth noting that it not only calls us not to lie, it calls us to be virtuous people. And it's worth noting that there is a lot of lying going on. Earlier this year, we had Christian Smith, a professor at Wake Forest. He is a philosopher and works in the social sciences and writes for Forbes and Wall Street Journal and other things. We had him out at Christ Church. He spoke at both a men's forum in a sports bar, which is something he'd never done. He also spoke at a Lake Light event. Anyway, in his book, The Character Gap, an Oxford Press book, he looks at the ethics, the ethical studies around lying. And he notes that he argues that about a third of the things that we hear about a third of the claims that we hear, have some lying with them. And then he says that 90% of people in self-reporting claim to lie, which leads one to ask whether or not those statistics are statistics that we can trust. Because if 90% of the people say that they're lying, are they lying about lying? Do they lie more or less than that? Do they even know? In an article by Tom Bartlett in the Chronicle of Higher Education, he writes, noting that there's this crisis, and this was a few years ago that this came out. There's a crisis in the academic community because in the sciences, and in particular in the social sciences, 60% of the experiments, 60% of the studies that are conducted and then reported in the journals cannot be replicated, suggesting that the data by these social scientists or by scientists, that the data cannot be substantiated because they were lying about it. So now, all of this leads us to wonder, well, so the Chronicle of Higher Education is saying that 60% of the studies can't be replicated. Can that study be replicated? Can we trust the Chronicle of Higher Education when it tells us that 60% of the studies are not accurate? Or is that an inflated number, right? It really speaks to the crisis that we have. Right now, the big banter is about, the news being so distorted. I've been doing a talk and am finishing a book called News Rules: How and Why the News Has Changed, How It's Changing You, and What to Do About It. And part of what I argue is that there's a whole lot of the news that we're hearing that is not true. It's fake news. And there's reasons for this, and it gets into some of the epistemological shifts that are taking place. It has to do with the business plans today and marketing revenue, and it has to do with all kinds of partisan issues and other things. All that to say, you and I both know that we're living in a world in which there's a lot of lying going on, and you and I, as Christ followers, are being called to be people of integrity. Have a good day.